The world was asleep when the first signs came. Most people did not see the way the stars blinked out one by one. It started above the Pacific Ocean, where the night sky looked clean and endless. But suddenly, patches of stars began to vanish. Like someone was painting the sky black. No alarms were raised. No news reports were made. Satellites kept recording, but no one looked closely enough until it was too late. At exactly 5:58 a.m. Eastern Time, the sky over New York turned red. Not the usual red of a beautiful sunrise. This was different. It was deeper, glowing like fire behind a layer of blood. The red light spread fast, seen from Washington to Chicago, from Texas to California. People stopped and stared. Drivers pulled over. Pilots reported strange readings in their instruments. Birds flew in chaotic patterns. Dogs barked wildly and cats ran to hide. The air felt strange, as if it was pressing down on everything. Then the humming began. It was a low sound at first, like a deep vibration coming from the sky itself. It made the ground feel alive. Glasses shook in cupboards. Windows rattled. Car alarms went off. People began recording on their phones, pointing to the sky, some laughing nervously, others looking afraid. Within minutes, every major news channel switched to live coverage. Cameras showed giant shapes moving behind the red clouds, dark and massive. Military jets were scrambled, but their signals were jammed. Radios buzzed with static. Then a voice was heard, cold, flat, and without emotion. This world now belongs to the Shivari Dominion. Surrender, and you will survive. Resist, and you will not exist. The message played in over 50 languages at once, blasting through televisions, radios, phones, even baby monitors. Every device picked it up. There was no place to hide from the sound. Panic followed instantly. People screamed and ran through the streets. Police stations were overwhelmed. Airports shut down. Governments tried to respond, but all global communication networks were under the control of the invaders now. Earth had lost its voice. Then the ships came through. The sky split open like paper tearing. The red clouds parted, and from the wound, in the heavens poured massive black ships shaped like blades and towers. They hovered, silent and deadly, casting long shadows over cities. Each one was larger than any human-made craft. Some were the size of islands. They had no engines, no. Wings, just dark metal, pulsing with eerie blue lights that looked like veins. Where they moved, the red sky followed, in less than 10 minutes. Over 300 of these ships had taken positions over key locations: New York, Los Angeles, London, Moscow, Beijing, Tokyo, Sydney, and others. Earth was being occupied without a single shot. But it would not stay quiet for long. As soon as the first resistance fighters fired weapons at the alien ships, their responses were immediate and brutal. A red beam shot down from one of the ships in Paris, turning an entire city block into glass. Tanks were crushed by invisible force fields. Fighter jets were swatted from the sky like flies. The Shivari had technology far beyond anything Earth had seen, and yet they didn't wipe us out. Not fully. They landed soldiers next, tall insect-like beings with sharp limbs and armored skin. They didn't speak. They moved in groups of 5, securing power plants, police stations, and media centers. Their goal was control, not destruction. They wanted Earth alive, but silent, obedient, broken. But even in the chaos, some humans didn't run. In Alaska, far from the main cities, an old man stood outside his cabin and stared up at the strange sky. He watched the red light dance above the mountains and listened to the hum echoing through the frozen forest. His eyes narrowed. He whispered, almost like he was talking to the wind. "It's too early. But maybe it's time." Inside his cabin was a staircase going deep underground. No one had seen what was beneath that cabin in decades. But as the ground trembled with the movement of alien ships, the man began to walk down slowly, lighting old torches that flared with blue fire. The air below was not cold, like the Alaskan winter. It was warm. It was alive. And something down there was waking up. Meanwhile, back in the cities, Earth's militaries tried to regroup. In Washington, D.C., what remained of the Pentagon had gathered a war room in a hidden bunker. General Harris, a stern man in his 60s with a scar across his face, slammed his fist on the table as another report came in. Berlin's gone. Rios. Under occupation? We've lost 90% of satellites. What the hell are we dealing with? No one answered. Scientists had no explanation. Alien technology defied physics. Lasers passed through matter. Ships moved without heat or noise. The laws of science seemed to bend for the Shivari. Panic turned to hopelessness. The president, who had barely escaped an airstrike, spoke only 3 words: find their weakness. But there was a problem. There was no visible weakness. The Shivari were organized, efficient, cold. They didn't respond to diplomacy. They didn't demand money, land, or resources. They simply stated, this world is now ours, the people. Of Earth tried to resist in small ways. Riots broke out. Looters clashed with alien patrols. Brave soldiers fought battles they couldn't win. Every time, the Shivari won, till night came. That night, something strange happened in northern Canada. A small alien patrol entered an abandoned mining site to check for human activity. They were never heard from again. Their tracker devices went silent. A search team was sent and they disappeared too. Only one recording remained, pulled from a damaged helmet. It showed a large shadow moving across the snow. Something huge, something fast. The last image was a flash of green light and then static. The aliens did not speak of it publicly, but their systems flagged the area as zone dark. No units were allowed to enter without command approval. It was the first time that Shivari had shown fear. It would not be the last. In the coming days, more patrols began disappearing at night. Only at night, people in small towns whispered of glowing eyes in the trees, of shapes moving faster than sound, strange singing in the wind. No one knew what it was. But the older people, the ones who remembered ancient stories, started to talk about legends buried under Earth's skin, about things that had lived here before humans, sleeping in stone, waiting for the stars to return, waiting for the right kind of enemy. The Shivari, for all their power, had made a mistake. They assumed Earth was defenseless. They thought humans were the only danger. But Earth was older than they understood, and not everything ancient was dead. Back in Alaska, the old man stood before a massive stone door. Symbols glowed along its edges. He placed his hand on the stone, and the mountain shook. Ice cracked. Far below, a deep hum answered him louder. Then the alien one, it shook the ground. Lights returned to long-dead machines. And from beneath the earth, a voice whispered through the dark, "Is it time?" The man nodded once.
But, yes.
Wake up. They're here. Somewhere deep in a network of caves hidden for thousands of years, something opened its eyes. Not human, not alien. It's something else. It's something made to protect the Earth, not its people, but the planet itself. And it was angry. The Shivari controlled the skies. They ruled the cities. They broke Earth's defenses with ease. But what awoke in the night did not fear technology. It did not fear death. It did not even know what mercy was. It had been created for one purpose only, to end anything that threatened the balance of the world. The humans didn't know it yet. But they were not alone, and for the first time since the sky turned red at dawn, the Shivari were being watched by something worse than them. The sky above Earth remained stained in crimson. But beneath its frozen crust, far from the chaos of falling cities and burning towers, a colder, older silence stirred. In the Arctic wilderness, the world seemed quiet, too quiet. Ash and the trees stood frozen in place. But something deep below the ice was no longer asleep. A week had passed since the Shivari Dominion claimed Earth. Most cities had surrendered. The last military bases had gone dark. Communications were still down. The resistance had scattered into underground networks. The sky was watched constantly. But it was the ground that now held a secret, the kind of secret that even the Shivari had never expected in northern Alaska. A research base known only to a handful of governments was buried under 70 feet of ice. Black Echo Facility it had once been called. Officially shut down 2 decades ago, unofficially it was still active. Operated by a group so secret, even the U.S. military wasn't entirely sure who ran it. The base had gone quiet 3 days after the invasion. No signals, no emergency pings, just silence. Men. And then a whisper, a strange pulse picked up by orbiting alien scouts. It was not a human frequency. It's not one of theirs either. The Shivari responded. A Shivari unit of elite scouts machines fused with organic matter, capable of operating in any terrain, was dispatched. They landed quietly on the snowy plain at the edge of a frozen canyon. There were 7 of them. Each stood over 8 feet tall. Their armor shimmered with a skin-like metal that bent light around it. They did not speak. They never needed to. They were called the Shrouded, the best the Dominion had. They walked into the canyon with silent steps. At first, all they found was snow and rock. Then came the signal, again faint, deep, almost like a heartbeat. They followed it. The lead scout raised its weapon and scanned the ice wall ahead. There was movement. Something was buried there. Not metal. It's not human. Something else. The signal grew louder. The scout took one more step forward. The canyon roared. From the cliffs above, chunks of ice cracked and fell. The ground shook. A strange green mist hissed from the cracks in the stone. The scouts turned to retreat, but it was too late. One by one, they were pulled into the fog. No sounds, no screams, just the heavy crunch of metal and bone end. Then nothing. An hour later, the signal stopped again. The Shivari command unit, above Earth, logged it as a failure. They sent a larger force. This time, drones accompanied the team. They approached with caution. The second group reached the canyon but found no trace of the first. Only deep marks in the snow. Claw marks. Giant ones. Strange symbols scorched into the ice. Symbols that had not been seen in 10,000 years. Back in orbit, the Shivari Council debated whether to continue probing. The humans were mostly subdued. There was no strategic need for the far north. But one of the alien command priests, their version of intelligence officers, warned them, something down there responds to us. It is not human. It is not ours. And it is watching. On Earth, the Resistance didn't know about the Arctic missions. They were busy hiding, running, trying to survive. In the ruins of Denver, a young woman named Eva Cole worked as a medic for a small cell of fighters. She had once been a scientist for NASA. Now, she stitched wounds in basement shelters and hid from patrol drones. But she remembered one thing her mentor had once told her years ago, before he vanished. If the sky ever turns red, look to the ice. The answer will be there. Eva didn't know why she remembered that now. But the thought wouldn't leave her mind. So she did what she could: search through old papers, scraps of code, broken tablets. She found a file buried deep in an old database. Project Titanfall, Class Black clearance only. It mentioned Black Echo. It mentioned energy readings. And it showed images cave systems under Alaska that had no natural formation. Walls made of carved stone. Machines bigger than aircraft carriers buried beneath miles of rock. She stared at the map coordinates and felt her blood run cold. At the same time, in that silent canyon up north, something moved beneath the ice. A chamber the size of a football stadium lit up with green and gold veins of light. Ancient gears turned, metal groaned. And deep within the heart of the earth, a voice spoke not with words, but with thought. Threat identified. Origin, off-world. Response, awakening. The stone split open. A massive hand of black alloy rose from the ground. Fingers like towers, eyes like twin suns. A guardian that had been built when Earth was young. Not by humans, not by aliens, but by something else. Something older than stars. Elsewhere, the Shivari began experiencing anomalies. Their machines jammed when flying near magnetic poles. Data corruption, power drains. One of their command ships was forced to land near Greenland after losing engine stability. Inside the ship, something had started growing mouse-like, but glowing and moving on its own. The crew was consumed within hours. Panic had not yet spread among the Dominion, but concern had. They had expected humans to resist with bullets and bombs. It's not with the planet itself. One Shivari commander, High Strategist Vornzak, sent a classified report to the Central Fleet. There are forces on this world that operate outside known parameters. Recommend orbital retreat and full-spectrum bombardment. The reply was cold. Hold position. Earth is to be subdued, not destroyed. Continue control protocols. So they continued. But the signals from the ice were growing. Human resistance hackers caught them. Eva was one of the first to decode part of it. The pulse was not just a signal, it was a pattern. Countdown. And then came the dreams dot all over the world. People began dreaming of the same thing. A massive shadow rising from a mountain. A voice calling them by name. Old names. Forgotten names. Some woke up crying. Others screaming. Well, few never woke at all. The Chavarai could not explain it. But they noticed that where the dreams happened, their control weakened. Their machines glitched. Their soldiers grew, afraid. Back in Alaska, the canyon was no longer silent. The ice had broken. Something had climbed out. Large, fast, silent. It left behind melted rock and strange symbols burned into trees. A drone picked up blurry footage before being torn in half. The last image was of something with 6 glowing eyes and armor made of stone and light. In their arrogance, the Shivari had disturbed a part of Earth they should never have touched. And now it had a reason to wake up. The wind over the northern wilderness screamed like a living thing. It howled through broken trees and shattered cliffs, carrying with it the frozen scent of fear and blood. Beneath the surface of the world, deep inside a mountain torn by age, in power, something was moving. The ancient metal halls vibrated with soundless energy. Lights long dead flickered to life. A heart that had not beaten in 10,000 years thudded once more. And far above, under the cold stars and alien ships, the world began to change. 3 Shivari scout ships hovered silently over the Alaskan range. Their scanners pulsed, reading heat, energy, and movement. But what they saw made no sense. Readings were rising massively, as if something was powering up beneath the Earth itself. A power so old, even their databases couldn't translate the signal's core frequency. The command ship requested analysis. The AI on board stalled, then failed. Static filled the channel. The lights dimmed, and the first scream came through. The fetus scream that did not belong to any human or alien. The ship exploded 30 seconds later. Not with fire, not with weapons. Simply broke apart silently, as if crushed from the inside out. The remaining 2 ships turned to retreat. One made it, the other didn't. A figure appeared in its path, a dark shape, too fast to see clearly, rising out of the canyon with wings of stone and fire. One strike, one flash of light. The second ship was gone. The survivors called it a shadow beast, but it wasn't a beast. It was a guardian, a weapon. A being forged for one purpose: to protect the balance of Earth, and it had awakened the creature. Known only in forgotten texts as the Deep One, stood over 200 feet tall. It did not walk, it glided. Its armor was made from an alloy not found on any charted world. Its eyes glowed with light so ancient it burned through all digital recording. And worse, it could not be tracked. The Shivari systems failed. Every time they tried, no radar, no scans, no heat detection could follow it. It simply vanished and reappeared where it wanted, especially at night, the first time it attacked. It destroyed a Dominion command post in one blow. The next night, it wiped out 4 patrols across northern Canada. The resistance didn't know what it was. They knew one thing: it wasn't human. And it wasn't on the side of the invaders. Eva Cole watched from her makeshift lab, buried under the ruins of a hospital, as footage began to spread through secret networks. Video clips, shaky recordings, blurry images. Something was fighting back. Something strong. Something terrifying. She replayed one video over and over, captured from a hacked Shivari drone just before it was torn apart. It showed the deep. One rising from a frozen lake. Alien troops opened fire. The bullets bounced off like rain. The beast looked at them not with rage, but with judgment. And then it opened its mouth, not to roar, but to release a deep sound like 1,000 voices. Speaking at once, the soldiers froze, their weapons shattered. Their armor turned to dust, and then the ground swallowed them whole. Eva leaned back, breath shallow. "It's not just Awake," she whispered. "It remembers." Somewhere else in the orbiting Shivari mothership, High Strategist Vornzak stared at the reports. Units missing, energy surges, drones failing, ships malfunctioning. He was a creature bred for logic. But even he felt the stir of something ancient and wrong. He summoned the Dominion's Oracle Unit, a living computer that held millions of years of alien history. "Query," he commanded. "Has a planet ever responded to occupation with planet-born guardians?" The Oracle paused. One known record. Lost sector. Classification: forbidden. Outcome: failure. Entire fleet destroyed. No survivors. Planet sealed. Status: quarantine in place. Vornzak stared at the words. For the first time in his long life, he felt fear, not of humans, not of their weapons, but of Earth itself. Down below, in the human resistance zones, more strange events began to occur. Resistance teams found weapons that no longer worked, but only at night. Alien tech shut down when carried past a certain point. One scout reported seeing moving trees in Oregon. A woman in Norway claimed a giant stone hand saved her from being crushed in a falling building. In Africa, glowing lines were found across the desert lines that had not been seen since before recorded history. And still, the Deep One hunted, not openly, not during the day, yet every night. It moved across the land, striking with silence. And speed, it didn't destroy cities. It didn't speak to humans. It only attacked the Shivari. Always them. Always when they were alone, or vulnerable, or arrogant, the aliens began to pull back from the forests, from the mountains. From the oceans, their strongest forces retreated to major cities, forming walls of drones and machines. The cities, they weren't safe. In New York, a group of alien soldiers vanished during a patrol. Cameras showed them walking into a subway tunnel. They never came out. Search drones found the tunnel walls covered in glowing vines and the words, "We were here first." Shivari propaganda broadcasts changed tone. Confident, threatening messages stopped. New ones begged humans to cooperate, promising safety, promising peace. But no one believed them. Not anymore. The people had seen something more powerful than any alien. They had seen Earth fight back. Eva met with other leaders of the resistance. They were scattered across the globe, hiding in caves, sewers, underground labs. They shared stories. They compared visions. More people were having dreams of fire, stone, and light. Some dreamed of voices. Others saw eyes. Always the same eyes. One man claimed the Deep One spoke to him in his sleep. Not with words, but feelings. He felt the Earth's pain, the rage. The ancient promise made by its builders. This world shall remain whole. Eva began putting the pieces together. The energy readings, the visions, the attacks. The planet itself wasn't just alive, it was armed. And the Guardians, maybe more than one, were waking up. She sent a message to all resistance cells. Stop hiding. Start listening. This planet is on our side. Meanwhile, in orbit, Vornzak faced a decision. The invasion was failing, but only during the night. During the day, they still controlled the skies, still held the cities, but they were losing morale, losing control. Losing understanding, he requested permission to use a planetary cleansing weapon, one that would destroy most of Earth's surface and render the rest unlivable for centuries. The Dominion Council denied it. This world is valuable, they said. You will win with control, not destruction. Vornzak knew better. He sent a final message to his troops. Stay out of the dark. Stay out of the ice. Stay out of the wild. But it was too late. The Deep One rose again, this time in full view of a Shivari satellite. It stood on a cliff above what used to be Anchorage. Its body was covered in light, its arms cracked with energy, and behind it, 5 more figures began to rise. Smaller, but still massive. Stone wings spread, eyes burned gold. The Guardians were no longer alone. Earth had remembered, and now it was awake. The cities still burned. Smoke rose into the sky like black veins against the red morning light. From orbit, Earth looked bruised, gray where forests once grew, silver where oceans boiled under alien beams. The Shivari Dominion had brought silence to most of the world. Their ships loomed over every major capital. Their soldiers patrolled the streets. Humans walked with eyes down and mouths shut, beaten into fear. But fear was fading, not because Earth's armies had returned. They were gone. Not because governments had struck back, they were broken. No. Something else had changed. The Shivari had made a mistake. They thought the humans were weak, that Earth was weak. But they had not looked deep enough. They had not heard the sound that now moved through the ground at night, the heartbeat of something ancient and unstoppable. In a city once known as Tokyo, a Shivari broadcasting tower stretched high into the smoke. It sent a constant message across the world, warning humans not to resist. The message looped in a calm, synthetic voice: remain inside. Obey curfew. Resistance will result in erasure. Your cooperation ensures survival. At precisely 3:11 a.m., the signal went dead. For 7 seconds, the screen turned black. Then came a sound like a low drum, slow and steady. A new voice followed, not loud, not angry, but clear and echoing. You invaded at dawn. Now you will learn what sleeps in the night. The feed cut out across every Shivari screen. Alarms. Blared soldiers scrambled, but no one could trace the source. There were no coordinates, no transmitter. Just silence again. Then came the attacks, that same night. 12 alien command posts were destroyed across 6 continents. No explosions, no missiles, just utter erasure. Metal was turned to ash. Drones stopped mid-air and dropped like stones. Patrols vanished without a trace. Survivors spoke of shadows moving faster than light, or a sound that made blood freeze. The creatures that stepped out of the earth itself. The Deep One was no longer alone. 5 more had awakened, guardians of different shapes, sizes, and powers. Some walked on 4 legs with armor like volcanic rock. Others slithered through the ground, cracking stone with every move. One moved only in water, creating whirlpools that pulled alien ships into the deep. They did not speak. They did not warn. They simply hunted. Eva Cole had been on the move since Denver fell. Now she led a group of survivors toward the Colorado mountains, where one of the Guardians had appeared. Her group was tired, hungry, and armed with little more than broken rifles. But they had hope because last night, they watched a Shivari cruiser fall from the sky without a single shot fired. She had begun keeping notes, patterns, sightings, energy readings. The Guardians were active mostly at night, but that was changing. One had been spotted at dusk in South America. Another had risen during a snowstorm in Siberia and torn through an entire alien base before fading into the blizzard. Eva believed. They were learning, growing stronger, responding to something beyond even human understanding. She had another theory to dangerous and unproven. But every time she watched a Guardian destroy an alien force, she noticed something. The attacks were never random. They only struck when aliens targeted certain places. Old forests, deep oceans, icy mountains, ancient temples, to places that humans had almost forgotten, but the Earth hadn't. Maybe, she said aloud one night, staring at a map lit by candlelight, they're not protecting us. Maybe they're protecting something bigger, something older than us. A boy in her group asked like what. She didn't answer, because she didn't know. Not yet in orbit. The Dominion's confidence cracked. High Strategist Voronzak watched recordings from every region. He watched his soldiers flee. He saw machines melt into puddles. He studied a new symbol carved into a city wall by some unknown. Hand 5 circles surrounding a 6th, all glowing with natural light. The symbol burned through their walls like acid. Even now, they could not clean it. He ordered more ships, more troops. But it didn't matter. His warriors were trained for war, not fear. Now fear ruled them. One soldier, captured by humans, and later rescued, reported something terrifying. They don't see us as enemies, the soldier had said. They see us as invaders, as viruses, and they're the cure. Vornzak ordered that soldier executed. But he couldn't erase the words from his mind. The humans, despite being beaten, broken, starving, they were changing too. No longer hiding, no longer begging for help. Resistance groups had grown bolder. With each Guardian strike, humans followed. They attacked when the aliens were weakest. Not with weapons, but with traps, with sabotage, with knowledge of their own land. They cut power to alien towers, collapsed bridges, lured patrols into dark woods where the Guardians waited. It was a slow, crawling war, but one that began turning. The Shivari began leaving some zones completely, pulling back to major cities, high towers, and strongholds where they believed the Guardians couldn't reach them. But the Guardians were learning one morning in the center of Madrid. A Shivari general stood, giving orders when the ground beneath him opened like a mouth. He fell screaming into the stone as a great clawed hand pulled him under. The pavement closed behind him. No one spoke. No one moved. His soldiers dropped their weapons and ran. That footage was leaked to every remaining human device. Millions watched it. Some laughed. Others cried. A few simply whispered, "We're not alone." Eva and her team finally reached the mountain. It wasn't a military base or a lab. It was just stone and snow and trees. But the signals led there, a pulse. In the ground, soft but steady, as if something below was breathing. They made camp at the edge of a deep ravine. That night, Eva heard it. Not a voice, not words, just emotion. Deep sorrow, burning anger, and something else. A question. Why? But she felt it inside her bones. In the darkness, the deep one moved. Watching, waiting. The aliens thought they had conquered Earth, that they had ended resistance. But they didn't understand what they had awakened. Earth wasn't just a planet, it was alive. It remembered. And it was defending itself with things older than war. Older than humans. Older than stars. The Shivari laughed at Earth once. Now they whispered of it in fear, and far below, more Guardians stirred, because dawn was coming again, and this time it would not rise for the invaders. Smoke choked the skyline of what was once Los Angeles. The famous hills were nothing but scorched rock. The city streets were buried in ash, concrete, and the silent remains of resistance. The Shivari flag black with a white burning sun hung over every surviving structure. Their machines stood like tombstones in the open, scanning, watching, patrolling. The city had fallen. It had not been claimed. Because when the sun went down, the shadows moved. The Shivari still believed they had control in their reports. Earth was listed as subdued, its people fragmented. But these were lies they told themselves. Their soldiers no longer rested easy. Their generals no longer traveled alone. Their warships circled Earth's orbit in tighter patterns, each week. And now, even their nights were no longer safe. It began with whispers in Chicago. 3 alien squads entered an abandoned subway to root out human survivors. Only one returned. Its body was found curled into itself, armor shredded, its eyes burned, blind. It made no sound, no movement. A message was carved into the floor beside it, not by hand, but by heat. Darkness belongs to Earth. In Beijing, a tower once used to broadcast Dominion commands went dark at 2:03 a.m. When the Shivari arrived to restore the signal, they found the broadcast room filled with shattered crystal shards that hadn't existed before. On every wall. A new symbol had been burned into the metal 6 eyes, staring outward from a circle of flames. No heat, no fire, just the marks and the silence. They didn't understand it yet. But Earth had grown its fangs. In truth, the deep one and the other. Guardians were not everywhere, but they didn't need to be. Rumors did the rest. Humans told stories in the dark, stories that grew with each retelling. Stone giants that crushed tanks with one step. Of vines that moved like snakes, strangling patrols in their sleep. Of voices in the fog that made Shivari soldiers walk off cliffs, and more terrifying than the truth was what the aliens didn't know. The shadows hunted them. Not just the Guardians, but the Earth itself, changing, shifting, remembering. Old forests that were supposed to be destroyed had regrown in days. Caves collapsed and reopened deeper than before. Rivers reversed flow. Magnetic fields shifted. Eva Cole saw it firsthand. She and her group had taken shelter in the ruins of a town in Montana. The buildings were hollow, the streets broken, but the land was strangely untouched. One night, she woke to a noise low, deep. It's like something massive breathing beneath the ground. She followed it, alone. With only a flashlight, she walked into the woods behind the town. Her steps became uncertain. The trees grew taller, older. Moss spread across her boots. Time felt wrong. Then she saw them, 3 alien scouts, frozen mid-step, weapons half-raised, not moving. They weren't dead. Just ... stopped. Eyes open. Is trembling. As if held in place by something they couldn't see, Eva stepped closer, and the light from her flashlight flickered. A voice, ancient and cold, filled the air, not through sound, but feeling. They do not belong. She turned, and for a brief moment saw a shape between the trees. Tall, wide, not man. Not machine. Its head brushed the treetops. Its eyes burned white blue. It looked at her but did nothing. Just nodded once. Then it was gone. The aliens were still trapped when she left. She didn't speak of it to the others. She couldn't. Words weren't strong enough to explain what she'd felt, what she'd seen back in orbit. Panic spread quietly through the Shivari fleet. Their war computers failed to process patterns. Data corrupted. Logics bent. Reports were contradictory. One scout ship reported seeing a mountain lift itself and walk. Another claimed a river turned to glass. Others spoke of dreams, yes, even aliens dreamed now. Unwelcome images of burning forests and stone eyes watching from the dark. High Strategist Voronzak ordered silence. No public broadcasts, no admissions of failure. But the truth leaked. His own guard had started abandoning posts during the night. Some wouldn't speak. Others screamed in sleep. The word Earth became something cursed, something fearful. Even their machines began to turn against them. In Johannesburg, one of their armored walkers powered up at midnight and began firing at other Shivari units. No humans had hacked it. It had no external damage. It simply went mad. When they finally shut it down, its internal logs showed a strange error, code just one word: remember. It didn't make sense. Their code language didn't even have that word. Eva and her team moved east, following signals they couldn't explain. Something in the ground called to her. Pulse. She believed it was leading her to something more, to the origin. Source. Resistance groups across the world began linking up. Not with phones or radios, those were still controlled, but with paths marked in symbols. Lights reflected through broken windows, songs hummed in the same key. A network of the silent and surviving human echo. The shadows hunted, and the humans followed. But the Shivari were desperate now. They began targeting known natural sites, rainforests, mountains, deserts, blasting them with orbital beams, burning anything they didn't understand. But every time they struck, something struck back. In Brazil, their burned ships were pulled down by roots that grew out of the earth and wrapped around their engines. In Siberia, flame troopers were frozen solid by a sudden blizzard that only lasted 10 minutes but turned the land to glass. And in Rome, the old city where human empires once rose and fell, a tower of their command fell not by missile, but by hands massive. Stone hands that crumbled the metal and walked away without a trace. The message was clear. Earth was done being silent. Eva found the cave she had been looking for in Wyoming. It looked ordinary from outside, but the moment she stepped in, she felt it, the warmth, the low thrum beneath her feet. The light that didn't come from any torch, and on the walls were carvings, not in English, not in any known tongue, but she could understand them. Pictures of stars, of guardians, of balance, of war, and at the end, a final image. A circle broken. In half, a warning, she touched it. The ground shook, and the guardian waiting in the mountains above opened its eyes. The Shivari ruled Earth only in daylight. By night, they cowered in fear behind walls, beneath shields, inside ships, hovering high above the surface. They had invaded expecting an easy conquest, but they had awakened something older than memory, and now their armies bled silently into the soil they tried to control. But it wasn't just the planet fighting back anymore. Humans were adapting, faster than expected, smarter than ever. They learned to move like shadows, to follow the storm, not fight it, to strike where the aliens didn't expect and vanish before alarms could even be sounded by now. Eva Cole had become more than a leader. She was a symbol. Some whispered she was chosen by the Guardians. Others said she was part of Earth itself. She didn't care about titles. All she knew was this: the enemy was afraid, and fear could be turned into weakness. The cave she discovered in Wyoming had changed everything. The symbols had spoken to her not with words, but through the mind-like dreams that wouldn't fade. She now saw patterns in the land, paths hidden from technology, signals in the bird songs and in the wind. The Guardians were no longer distant myths. They were moving with her. Her new group called themselves the Awakened. They had no uniforms, no ranks, just purpose. And their mission was simple: pick the Shivari from the inside. That mission began with Black Nida, coordinated. Strike against 6 alien outposts across 3 continents. No weapons more advanced than what they could carry. No backup. No escape plan. Just precision, fear, and the unexpected. In Alaska, it took down a communications tower by releasing a swarm of bats that had been biologically tagged with a frequency disrupting pulse. When the bats flew through the tower, every signal failed. Then came the humans, dressed in ice and snow, silent and fast. In under 20 minutes, the outpost was gone. In Paris, they sabotaged an alien weapons factory by flooding the underground levels with natural gas, then lighting a single candle. The fire didn't just destroy the building, it melted the surrounding Shivari armor, fusing soldiers into their own tech. But the most daring strike happened in the heart of New Asia, where the Dominion kept one of its largest war supply centers. Eva herself led that raid. Using tunnels created by rootses, living roots that split concrete, they moved beneath the base. The deeper they went, the more unstable the air became. Lights flickered. Metal corroded. The Earth didn't want the Shivari here. Yet, much was clear. Once inside, Eva and her team planted seed bombs devices that carried fast-growing organisms engineered from Earth's most aggressive flora. Within minutes, vines burst through metal, wrapping around weapons, consoles, and fuel tanks. The base collapsed from the inside. One alien officer escaped, just one. He ran blindly across open ground, armor torn, screaming in his own tongue. He didn't see the symbol burned into the soil behind him. You are the invader. The Shivari High Council tried to respond with greater force. They issued orders for planetary cleansing. Full orbital strikes on unscanned territories. No mercy, no distinction between soldier or survivor. But the more they destroyed, the more unpredictable Earth became. Forests regrew overnight. Animals began traveling in coordinated patterns, forming barriers around human groups. Birds intercepted drones. Whales sang signals that disabled naval tracking. It was as if the planet itself was rebelling in unison. And it didn't stop there. The technology the aliens relied on began to malfunction. Energy weapons misfired. Armor systems overheated. Scout ships drifted from their paths as navigation failed without explanation. One general, Zarkatha, demanded the use of a void emitter, a weapon so dangerous it had been banned on other warfronts. Its energy pulse could wipe life from entire cities. The Council approved it their target, a dense forest region in South America, believed to shelter both humans and Guardians. But something went wrong. The weapon never fired. Instead, it turned inward, releasing its power directly into the ship. Within seconds, the vessel shattered into fragments that fell like burning metal rain across the ocean. No one had touched it. No one had even approached it, and in its place, in the clouds above where it had hovered, a shape appeared. A massive formed eyes like blue stars, arms of living stone, A guardian. Watching the message was simple. You do not control this place. Back on the ground, Eva knew the time was coming. The aliens were unraveling. Their belief in superiority had turned to fear. Their grip was loosening, and fear made them sloppy. It was time to take the war to their core. But to do that, they needed more than sabotage. They needed to unite what was left of humanity. Across the globe, her name traveled faster than any signal. Resistant cells that had once operated alone now moved together. Messages passed through carvings, smoke signals, old books. Even believed the Guardians themselves were guiding the humans to each other. They met in the place where it all began, the crater outside Denver, where the first HFY landers had touched down. Eva stood before hundreds of them fighters, farmers, old soldiers, young rebels, scientists, and even a few children. She didn't shout. She didn't promise victory. She simply said, "They think we're broken, but they don't understand. They only destroyed the surface, not the soul. We're still here, and now we strike together." From the shadows came fire, not the kind born from hatred but from purpose. Humans began reclaiming what had been, taken step by step, one outpost, one field, one city. The HFY fleet above Earth began to rotate faster, tighter, more defensive. They no longer saw Earth as a conquered world, but a prison they were trapped inside, and the sky was changing again. New lights flickered among the starships not built by aliens, by the old Earth defense projects that had gone silent years ago. Orbiting stations reactivated. Codes long lost were rediscovered by minds that refused to surrender. The HFY weren't just losing ground, they were losing control of the very sky in the east. A deep mountain rumbled. Beneath it, a sleeping force stirred one. Even the Guardians did not fully understand. It was not part of Earth's original plan. It had been left here long ago, locked beneath stone, and now, awakened by war, it began to rise. Beneath the black mountains of Central Asia, something ancient moved. It was not human. It was not alien. It was something older, something that had been buried when the Earth was still young. The Guardians feared it. The HFY had no idea. It even existed. But the war had shaken the ground too deeply, broken the seals too carelessly, and now it was waking up. Eva Cole stood at the edge of the crater, her breath cold in the high-altitude air. Around her, engineers worked with quiet urgency, setting up receivers, planting cables, translating old carvings into digital patterns. This place wasn't on any map. It had never been found because it didn't want to be found, but now it had revealed itself. For weeks, strange signals had interrupted HFY systems' low-frequency pulses from beneath the surface that fried. Circuits triggered magnetic storms and echoed in the minds of every sensitive human within miles. Some called it a weapon. Others whispered it was alive. Eva only knew one thing. Earth had another secret, and it had chosen now to be heard. The Guardians warned her through dreams, not with fear but caution. They showed her fire falling from the sky, cities swallowed. In black vines, oceans boiling under a sunless sky. Visions of a force that did not serve Earth, but remembered Earth as a cradle, as a grave. Whatever it was, it had been locked away for a reason. But now the war had weakened the locks. The HFY sensed the disturbance too. Their patrols thickened across the mountain range. Drones swarmed the skies. Yet they wouldn't come near the crater. They feared what was inside the command tent. Eva studied the readings. The energy spikes were unlike anything they had seen. Not plasma, not nuclear, not natural. It pulsed in patterns, like music, and it responded when humans approached. The first volunteer was a young man named Harun, a linguist from the ruins of Damascus. He had once studied dead Earth languages. Now he believed this buried force was trying to speak. He stepped into the fissure alone, carrying only a small translator and a stone talisman carved with guardian markings. For 12 hours, there was no sound. Then came the voice. It did not come from here. It came from everywhere, low, deep, and layered, like thousands of voices speaking as one. The humans could not understand the words, The Shivari did. Their systems translated the message automatically, and it echoed across their entire fleet. We remember the stars. We remember the fire. You are not the first. You will not be the last. This world is not yours. Panic swept the alien command. Ships began pulling back from orbit. Lower officers screamed for retreat. Some even abandoned their stations entirely. Only the high command remained, steady, ordering a full planetary strike against the mountain range. They wanted to bury the force, for it grew stronger, but it was too late. The ground cracked wide open. A beam of black light shot into the sky, turning clouds into ash. Energy flooded the region, disrupting gravity. Shivari ships drifted off course, crashing into one another like dead satellites. A ring of fire rose around the crater, but it didn't burn. Guessed, it hummed, and from within it, the shape came massive, shifting, not metal, not stone. A body of moving energy shaped like something between a giant and a storm. No eyes, but it saw. No mouth, but it spoke. It had no name, only a memory. The Guardians formed a circle in the sky, orbiting the form, ancient symbols glowing in patterns unseen by human eyes. They did not try to stop it. They simply watched. Eva stepped forward, wind tearing through her coat, her feet planted at the edge of the rising platform. The being turned, and somehow felt her. Her thoughts, her blood. It leaned close, not in threat, but in curiosity, and then it spoke again, in words that touched. Only her mind. You are the balance. Child of fire and dust. Speak the name of the enemy. Eva didn't hesitate. She whispered one word. Shivari. The thing lifted its arms. Across the planet, every Shivari device stopped working. Ships fell from the sky. Weapons turned cold. Communications went dark. Even their breathing masks, dependent on atmospheric controls' function. It was not an attack. It was a silencing. The Dominion collapsed in minutes. Cities they had claimed returned to silence. Only those who surrendered survived. Those who tried to fight vanished. But this power did not stop. The being kept rising, drawing energy from the planet like roots drawing water. Earthquakes shook the continent. Storms formed over the seas. Even the Guardians grew uneasy, shifting in slow circles like wolves around a fire. It was too strong, too hungry, and it would not stop. Eva realized the truth. Shivari had awakened it. But so had the humans, with war, with rage, with pain. The being had fed on the chaos. No, it wanted more. It wasn't Earth's guardian, it was Earth's shadow. And if it kept growing, it would consume everything. She had one chance. She stepped forward again. Holding the same stone talisman Haroon had carried, she dropped to her knees and placed it on the ground. The humming stopped. The being turned again. The Guardians descended, and for a moment, all was still. Eva raised her hand and whispered into the wind. Not all who fight must destroy. Not all who awaken must conquer. Sleep again, and let us protect this place. The being stared. Then, like mist in the morning sun, it began to fade. Piece by piece. It broke apart, its light sinking back into the earth. The ground sealed. The wind calmed, and Eva collapsed. She awoke 3 days later in a shelter beneath the mountain. Around her, humans gathered, whispering her name. No longer as a fighter, not as a rebel, but as the one who sent the darkness back. Across the world, rebuilding had begun. The Guardians watched silently, slowly fading from human sight once more. The Shivari remnants surrendered fully, not to humanity but to Earth itself. And beneath the soil, in silence, the ancient thing rested once more, waiting, because war had ended, but peace was only the beginning.